Basically do not need introductions, but I need to give an introduction. And the first, of course, is Thea Musgrave, a very remarkable composer who will be 98, I think, rather soon. And a wonderful husband, conductor, Mark is with us. I'm sure he has much more to say about it than I do, but I will. So I just give you the basic things. I was born in Edinburgh, in Scotland, and it was said 1970, oh, I should say before that, she was a pupil of Nadia Boulanger. And also, according to Wikipedia, also a Karen Copeland. But I think what's especially Nadia Boulanger is interesting because all the students develop incredibly individualistically. You don't say, oh, this is a student, don't say this one. But she was someone who was able to both give an incredibly clear sense of what music is, and also great encouragement, I should say. And I'm hoping we did little bits of something several years ago, and I'm hoping to do something more with her kind of at the center or with the various students. And of course, her students are quite illustrious, including Aaron Copeland, Thea Musgrave, Elliot Carter, yes, and even Jean-François, who apparently, according to Elliot Carter, that he would do his 8-part invertible counterpoint exercise on the train going to But anyway, that's for another time. Then, in 1970, she became a guest professor at the University of California in Santa Barbara. And from 1987 to 2002, she was a distinguished professor at Queens College. This is right before I got to Queens College. So we never met there. Like we dovetail, we can say, that's right. And she has a fantastic basic collection of pieces that she has done. And what is most notable about all of them is how she has an amazingly clear, dramatic idea that comes across with tremendous power in all her pieces. Now, I should mention that this piece that I will play, which she actually wrote for oboe, and I must give my apologies to the wonderful oboe she wrote it for, Nicholas Daniel. But we're friends, so I think he understands. And I do believe that he stole something from the clarinet repertoire that Thea wrote as well. So, anyway, and I'm just going to read a little bit from the beginning, from the preface to the Night Windows. And it is walking down a darkened street. It's hard to resist looking in through lighted windows and catching a glimpse of other people's lives. The imagination lingers. Night Windows is the title of a painting by Edward Hopper. of a scene in one such lighted window. However, the scenes in this work, though reflecting something of the loneliness in so many of the Hopper paintings, are all imaginary, highly charged emotional moments. And this is an understatement, I would say. And of course, they're in 5 movements: loneliness, anger, nostalgia, despair, and frenzy. After this piece comes a composer who I had no idea about until just a little while ago. It's Jesus Valligay. And he's a Spanish composer, and also actually a rather sort of remarkable person. He was also an ethnomusicologist. He was a historian. He was friends of Poulenc and Ravel and Stravinsky and De Falla and Granados. And he was a member of the group of 8. This is a group of Spanish composers, similar to Les Six or the 5 from St. Petersburg, and very interesting. And he was very close to De Falla, I should say. And it was, now, the Civil War came to Spain in the middle 1930s, and he had to go into exile in Mexico. And there, he became actually quite important in Mexican musical culture. But, and this is very curious, his name did not make it really north of the border of Mexico at all. That's something I don't really understand. However, he did become, while he was in Mexico, he did become very friendly with Igor Stravinsky and Stravinsky's wife there. And he opened the first private art gallery in Mexico, Ayako, which exhibited works from many of Mexico's young and leading artists. He returned to Spain in 1965, and did write a bit, but not too much. He had basically health problems throughout from that time until he passed away in 1993. His work that we wrote, this sonata really, is very much, well, it's influenced by Stravinsky, and we can hear that also, but it's almost a kind of looking at music from the perspective of the artistic movement of Dada. So there's a lot there which is sort of anti what we think of music in a way. But where we have harmonies which don't mesh. But why not? Perhaps that's okay. And a lot of reminiscences of different kind of popular tunes, etc., which come in weird ways. I was very taken with this piece, and very happy to get to know this composer, who I really had no idea about. And the last work is by Della Bartok, the contrast. And Bartok needs no introduction at all, except that this was in 1938. Joseph Szigeti approached Benny Goodman with an idea that perhaps they should have Bartok write a trio for them. actually delving into classical music in a way. Now, his only proviso at the time that he agreed to the commission, which he, of course, he paid for the work, was that it should be two movements that would fit on two sides of what at that time was a 78 record. Well, maybe some of you know 33 records, and 45, but 78. That's, I do have a collection of 78 records at home from my father and grandfather. I know nothing to play them on. It's very interesting. I can't somehow get rid of them. Anyway, now that would be something like 4 minutes of music on each side, or 3.5 minutes on each side. Bartók agreed to it, but came up with 2 works, which he called 2 rhapsodies. And unfortunately, they were too long for the 2 sides of the 78 recording, so the 78 record. So much for that plan. But at the same time, it turns out, and this is what I read most recently, he had been writing a 3rd movement, in other words, a middle movement, so that the work could have a really finished form. So I have a feeling that he wrote a little too long on purpose. But the first performance was with only the 2 movements, the first and the 3rd movements. The first was called Verbokos, and the last one, the Sheves. The Sheves was a village dance, and Verbokos was a recruiting dance. Verbokos was the music originally in the during the Austro-Hungarian Empire time, that the military recruiters played when they came into villages in Hungary to entice the boys there, to join the military. So the music had to be very kind of uplifting. And you had no idea what they were getting into, of course. And though that music became kind of co-opted, and I have a feeling, although I'm really not at all an expert, I have a feeling that Liszt was a bit responsible for this, but it became a kind of the nationalistic music of Hungary of this time. Right. And it was characterized by a particular kind of downbeat rhythm, and you can hear that in the piece. Sheves says this is a fast dance or a village dance, and the middle part is called pihenő, which means relaxation. But I was told by a Hungarian friend of mine that the better translation is rest, because rest can be a little uncomfortable also. And the piece in the middle is not really relaxed, I would say at all, but it has this kind of inner tension to it. I spoke to another Hungarian friend who said, no, it just means relax. So you can decide for yourself what it should be. Anyway, now I also believe, I'm talking a little long, but that it's very possible that the reason at that time that Szigeti did initiate the commission with many women was twofold. First of all, to get Bartók better known a little bit in the United States, ended up, he stayed in New York, and I have many anecdotes from Elliott Carter about Bartók, and so even at that time. And in fact, Bartók did some research, and actually he did transcriptions of, this is from parts in Thessaloniki and into the north of Greece, of folk songs, which were at Columbia University. And the reason for this, and Carter was actually instrumental in getting Bartók this job, because Bartók refused any kind of assistance, we should say, when he came over. He was very proud, so he needed to somehow work. That's right. He also did apply for a position at the Eastman School of Music, and he was turned down. So that's not something the school needs to be proud of. And the other thing about Bartók is that when he died in 45, and at that time, at the funeral, there were maybe only 10 people in attendance there, and some composers, including Elliott Carter again, tried to have a benefit concert so that his widow could take his body back to Hungary afterwards. But the concert, they could not get enough audience for that. It's kind of remarkable to think of that nowadays, that Bartók was considered someone not at all important in this country. And it was the Hungarian newspaper which was able to actually gather up the funds to enable